What's the dumbest rule you've ever been caught breaking? I was 19 when I had to appear in court for a small civil case about a car accident. Nothing major, just figuring out who owed who for a bent bumper and some scratched paint. I was nervous as hell because I'd never been in a courtroom before. The whole place felt serious and intimidating with its dark wood panels and that giant flag hanging behind the judge's bench. I sat quietly in the back row waiting for my turn. But before my case, the judge was handling a different one involving an old man being sued for missing HOA fees. The man's name was Walter, and he looked like he was in his 70s with thin white hair and a worn brown jacket that had seen better days. He kept fumbling with a stack of papers in his lap. The HOA lawyer was this sharp-dressed woman in a navy suit who spoke like she was reading from a script. She explained that Walter owed $3,000 in late fees and violations. His grass was too long, his mailbox was the wrong color, and he hadn't paid his monthly dues in 8 months. They wanted to foreclose on his house that he'd lived in for 40 years. Walter stood up slowly when the judge asked him to explain his side. His voice was shaky, but he told the court that his wife Helen had died the year before from cancer. She was the one who handled all their mail and bills. After she passed, he couldn't keep up with everything. He'd been so lost in grief that letters just piled up on the kitchen table unopened for months. The HOA lawyer interrupted, saying grief wasn't an excuse for breaking community rules. Walter's eyes filled with tears as he explained he was living on Social Security and couldn't afford the late fees. He just wanted to stay in the home where he'd raised his kids and taken care of his wife until her last day. The judge listened carefully to both sides. Then he looked directly at the HOA lawyer and said that while rules were important, some situations called for basic human compassion. He ruled that the late fees were excessive and unreasonable given the circumstances. Walter would get a payment plan of $50 a month for the basic dues, and the HOA couldn't threaten foreclosure anymore. Walter's face lit up with relief. His shoulders, which had been hunched with worry, finally relaxed. The old man actually smiled for the first time since I'd been watching. It was such a beautiful moment seeing justice work the way it should. That's when I quietly clapped. Just 2 small claps, nothing loud or disruptive. I was genuinely moved by the judge's decision to help this grieving widower keep his home. It felt like the right thing to do, showing appreciation for fairness and mercy. The bailiff, a big guy with a stern face, immediately walked over to my row. He leaned down and whispered that clapping was not allowed in court under any circumstances. I apologized right away, saying I didn't know the rule and it wouldn't happen again. I thought that was the end of it. 10 minutes later, right as my case was finally called, the judge brought up what he called the clapping incident. He said it showed a lack of respect for courtroom decorum and proper legal procedure. I tried to explain that I was just moved by the previous case and meant no disrespect, but he cut me off with his hand raised. "Let that be a lesson," he said firmly. "This is not a theater where you applaud performances. This is a court of law." My actual case went fine. The other driver and I worked out who would pay what for the accident damage. But afterward, as everyone was leaving, the bailiff handed me a paper. The judge was holding me in contempt of court for disruption and disrespectful behavior. The fine was $75, payable within 30 days. I was stunned. $75 for quietly clapping twice at a heartwarming moment of justice. It felt completely unfair, but what could I do? I paid the fine and tried to forget about the whole embarrassing experience. 3 months later, I got an official letter from the court clerk's office. I almost threw it away thinking it was another fee or notice, but something made me open it. Inside was a check for $75 along with a short typed note. The note explained that a retired judge had somehow seen video footage of my hearing and contacted the Judicial Review Board. He filed a complaint saying that my fine was an abuse of authority and completely inappropriate given the minor nature of my actions. The reviewing board agreed, refunded my money, and issued an official warning to the judge about misuse of contempt powers.